Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. First of all, I want to wish each and every one of you a very, very happy new year from the Advance, Impact, and Legacy Show. We have a very, very special guest today who I'm going to be introducing in a moment. Trust me, you're in for a treat. This was totally planned. So we bring you someone very, very special at the beginning of your 2022. So that you can kick it off in the right way. But first of all, what do we do on the Advance, Impact, Legacy Show? Well, it's very, very simple. We are inspiring you, motivating you, and mobilizing you, our viewers, to advance in your sphere of influence, to create an impact that goes beyond you, which creates legacy. So you are special. You're born with a purpose, and your destiny is important to us. And this is why we're here, to inspire you and to help you to advance in the most efficient way. Now, talking about advancing in the most efficient way, one of the key protocols, principles, schools of thought, and really dynamics on the planet to be able to efficiently move towards where you want to is the field of study called emotional intelligence. And we're going to be diving really, really deep into this because we're very, very honored today to have who I call the queen of emotional intelligence here, Dhanak. Now, Ush is a friend. She's based in Australia. We're going to be hearing a little bit about her background, but she works with high net worth individuals, executive companies, and organizations all around the world who want to effect positive change within their staff, within their influence, within their customer base, and within their value transaction around the world. And she's using emotional intelligence. For me, she's the number one emotional intelligence authority on the planet. This is so, so, so key to everything that we do here. Emotional intelligence is the way forward if you want to create those efficiencies. So without further ado, I am very honored to welcome my dear friend, the number one expert in the world and authority, in my opinion, on emotional intelligence, all the way from Australia, Ush Dhanak. I'm just going to add her into the stream. Hey, Ush, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Good, thank you. How are you?
Great to see you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Can you believe it? Like we're already, in the first week of January, aren't we? Like almost the end of the first week.
I know. It's just incredible, isn't it? It's like time just goes so quickly. And yeah, we're already here. And, I think for the viewers, they've really been looking forward to meeting you, but also really getting their head around why emotional intelligence is so, so key to sort of moving forward in life, but doing it in a very sort of economical way, but allows you to be fulfilled and, remain complete without all the stress and everything else that goes with a lot of stuff that human beings sort of tend to endeavor. Ush, where I would like to start off with is, where are you from? What's your background? Where did it all start? Not necessarily the EQ stuff, because we'll get into that, but just so people get a flavor of who you are, what your essence is, and sort of where you're from. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I still sound a little bit pommy because I was born in London.
Okay.
And I've been living in Sydney now. It will be 17 years actually in February. So it's gone really quick, and I've got a 11-year-old daughter, Gia, who's born in Australia. So that's our life here, and we love it. And in terms of my professional background, I studied law. So I was a lawyer for a number of years, and I also sat the London bar. So I practiced, as a barrister for a number of years as well. Yeah. Then moved over to Australia, practiced law again for a little while, but it just wasn't very fulfilling. And didn't really enjoy it. And I did one of those things, Matt, where we contemplate life and we just know that there's more to life than working 9 to 5, or in a lawyer's case, 9 to 9.
Really?
And there was just no passion or purpose in what I was doing. So I literally did go to work one day, quit, came home, and it was about 11 a.m. and I was watching like Dr. Phil or Oprah or something on TV going, what am I going to do with my life? And that is when I thought I need to hire a coach.
Okay.
So I hired a coach for 12 months, and one of the modules and one of the areas that I learnt was all around my emotional intelligence.
Wow.
Now, the reason I chose to specialize in this field, and this was 8 years ago, was because I had none. I was
Really?
terrible. Yeah,
I can't imagine. It's like kind of out of my sphere of understanding.
yeah.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, what is this? Like, what is this about being aware of your emotions, connecting with people, learning to respond and not react? And it was none of that stuff. And I realized that it was probably my barrister training that made me the way that I was, that almost reduced my EQ, so to speak.
Right.
So I dived deeper into it for a number of years while, working out what to do with my life. I trained as a coach, so I obviously specialize in EQ with the Social and Emotional Intelligence Authority in the States. And I also did training in neuro leadership. So I'm a certified neuro leadership coach as well, and also a mediator. So that's sort of all the package of what I bring. And yeah, that's what I do. And I've been living and breathing it now for 8 years. And it's been an interesting journey, because when I first started, I remember people saying, Ush, you're quitting this successful career as a lawyer. We don't even know what EQ is. People aren't going to want it. And I just sort of back to myself and go, I know this has changed my life, and I know it's going to change the life of others too.
Well, hats off to you, because I think that's incredible to come from this kind of perceived prestigious, career of the bar in London and, international law and so forth, which, is great work, right? But if it's not your purpose and your destiny, that misalignment's going to cause so many issues down the line, and it's
Yes.
never going to allow you to really be fulfilled. And so hats off to you. I never forget, I was probably about 22, 23 when I first came across emotional intelligence. I've never studied it properly,
Mm,
like obviously you have. But I remember I was at a church, and right at the end, this elderly gentleman came up to me and said, have you ever read Daniel Goleman's book on
yeah.
emotional intelligence? And I didn't even know what emotional intelligence was. But as soon as he said it, I realized I didn't have much. I didn't have much emotional intelligence. I used to be very reactive, and
Yeah.
things used to really stress me out, like silly
Yeah.
little things.
Yeah.
And I got his book, and it was really, really useful. So that was my kind of first exposure to it, which was really, really interesting. But I know you bring so much value to organizations going through change, individuals, high
Mm,
net worth individuals, and then sort of, everyday people, like myself and others who are
yeah.
just wanting to get ahead in life, align with their purpose and move forward. Would you be able to sort of share with us, Ush, because there'll be viewers watching on the streams, there'll be viewers, watching the recording, who kind of have heard of emotional intelligence, don't really know what it is, and
Mm.
probably don't know how useful it's going to be for them. So would you be able to sort of, kind of putting you on the spot here, but would you be able to sort of give us a definition of emotional intelligence and walk us through it a little bit? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, the most simplest way to explain it is emotional intelligence, and the measure of it is EQ. So we all understand what IQ is, yeah?
Yeah.
Your intelligence quotient. And if you hear me say EQ, it's because I'm talking about the measure, your emotional quotient of your emotional intelligence. Okay, that's where the term EQ comes from.
Hmm.
In a nutshell, it's the ability to be aware of your own emotions. And then they basically say that the more you can understand your emotions and how you feel, the better you can understand the emotions of all the people around you. So whether that's in your friends, in your relationships, in the workplace, or if you're a leader, or if you're a coach or a trainer. And it's really true. If we don't understand who we are, and we don't understand our emotions and the reason we behave the way we do, we're not going to be able to empathize and understand other people. So that's really what EQ means. I guess for me personally, if I can share, it was about getting out of my own head. Yeah. So
Okay.
I was quite self absorbed. I was quite very alpha female, high masculine energy.
Yeah.
And I sort of was really driven. Like I had a goal. I almost had blinkers on, which
Right.
is great, which we do want to have when we need to focus on a goal. But I think what that meant for me was I lost touch of why I was feeling certain things and the way I was feeling certain things. And it closed me off to really diving deeper into my emotions. And I remember one of the first exercises that I learned, and I teach everyone that I coach, and they kill me for it because it's painful, but is for 21 days, 7 or 8 times a day, you need to write down what emotions you feel.
Okay.
And when I was given that task, I thought, that's great, that's easy. It really, really isn't. Like, to write down 8 times a day how you're feeling. And I realized that my emotional vocabulary was shocking. Like, it was happy, sad, frustrated, pissed off, hangry. I don't think that's an emotion. But there was just like no emotional vocabulary. And it made me think that if I can't articulate how I feel, how am I
Right.
going to understand how someone else is feeling? Yeah.
100%.
And if anyone's watching and they think, oh, you know what, my emotional vocabulary isn't great, if you just type into Google the emotions wheel, it's a fascinating tool. And what that does is it shows you, let's say you have the emotion of anger, it shows you what sits behind that emotion. Yeah. So
Mhm.
why do you feel angry? There's always something else underneath that emotion that's triggering that feeling.
Right. Right.
So that's pretty much what emotional intelligence for me personally means, is just really being in touch with who I am and then being the best version of me. So that
Wow.
I'm not, like you said, Matt, like, we respond, and react to things
Yeah.
because we're triggered. We don't understand why we're triggered. So it's really trying to pinpoint those sorts of things.
That's really interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that we're all kind of born with a measure of IQ. So, some of us are geniuses, some of us not so much, and others of us, we may struggle with certain things in terms of intellectual ability. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's not quite the same in my understanding with EQ. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So EQ is a learned behavior.
Ah,
So you're not born with a measure of EQ. It's something that you develop. And the reason for that is because, we all have paradigms. We all have stories that we're conditioned with in our upbringing, whether that's our parents, our siblings, our community, our school, our friends, and that shapes the way that we are. And, I know you talk about this a lot, but all of that stuff that we're surrounded with growing up really actually builds our own internal dialogue, and it
right.
builds the stories that we tell ourselves. Yeah.
Mhm,
Did
mhm.
you know there's only 2 fears that you're born with? Do you know what they are?
The two fears that you're
There's
born.
only 2
I
fears that you're
should
born with.
know Ush, what they are, and I'm going to take an educated guess
Okay.
if my unconscious mind is switched on this morning. But it's the fear of falling,
Yes, that's one.
and
What's the
I've
other
got
one?
one right. Okay, so what's the other one now? Fear of falling. Is it the fear of being alone?
Loud noises.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're the only 2 when a child is born, when a baby's born, that's the only 2 fears that you're born with. But as we grow older, we borrow other people's fears. Yeah.
Right.
We borrow other people's emotions. We borrow other people's stories, and
Okay.
they shape who we are. And if
Right.
we don't break down those stories or understand why those stories make us behave the way we do as an adult, that's
Yes.
where we're lacking EQ. So what EQ does is it breaks open that door of self-awareness
Right.
and go, why do I have this fear? Why is my self-talk saying I'm not good enough? Why
Yeah.
is my self-talk saying that everyone else deserves love and happiness, but I don't?
Yeah.
Why is my self-talk saying that I need constant affirmation of who I am as a person? So EQ really, the deep side of EQ really taps into, those stories around who we are. So absolutely, back to your question, EQ is a learned behavior. So we can definitely raise our emotional intelligence. And you might have seen, I talk about it a lot on my Facebook post, but like I teach kids as well about emotional intelligence. And I also teach, people up into their 70s and 80s. So look, a lack of EQ doesn't discriminate, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a wonderful field of study because, I mean, you could take this into very dysfunctional communities, even sort
Yeah,
of prisons or places where there's a lot of drugs and stuff, where the dysfunction is really, really high. And I'm guessing a lot of that is all fueled by poor emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it
Crazy,
is.
crazy.
Yeah. And I think the other thing with EQ to mention is, we live in a society where we're taught to almost constantly be positive, right?
Yeah,
Like, you hear posts about motivational quotes, and
yeah,
we've all got like 100 self-help books. I can see, all the books behind you. I've got my bookshelf next to me.
yeah,
And I think one of the things I really want to teach about EQ that is that, it's okay to feel the range of emotions you feel. It's
absolutely.
okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have moments where you don't feel okay.
Yeah,
All of that sort of stuff. And second to that is you are not your emotions and you are not your thoughts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you feel anger, it doesn't mean that you're an angry person.
Right.
It means you are a beautiful, divine person
Mm.
that is experiencing the emotion of anger.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you've almost got to separate those emotions to who you are. And there's a beautiful, famous quote, talking of quotes around that, that says, imagine that, you know, you're the sky. The sky is going to experience all different seasons, all different weathers,
yeah,
thunder, sunshine, hail, rain. But at the end of the day, when all of that's gone, the sky's the sky, right? It's just neutral. It's just there. And it almost observes the weather as well, as opposed to really be part of that. It lets the weather do what it needs to do in that moment in time, knowing that
mm,
it's going to pass. And that's the same with our emotions. I think, we don't allow ourselves sometimes to sit through the discomfort
yeah,
of what we feel. And we almost want to just rush through that process and get that instant gratification of feeling good again. Right? We've all
absolutely.
been through that, right? It is uncomfortable to experience grief, anxiety,
Mm.
sadness with everything that's going on in the pandemic, the division of what's happening with the COVID and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So
Society, yeah.
it is okay to feel what you need to feel.
Yeah, it's incredible because I mean, just through the last 2 years, with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of increase in, mental health issues. I
Yes.
get a feeling there's a lot of people suffering behind closed doors who are not really revealing their pain and stuff like that. And you're absolutely right. There seems to be a huge emphasis on sort of being positive, being happy. There's no seasonal sort of, kind of breakdown of the different range of emotions. For
Mm.
me, it's never been healthy to be happy and super pumped all the time. Um,
Yeah,
it's
that's
very
right.
counterintuitive. So it's really refreshing to hear that, Ush. So tell us about some of your clients, because you don't have to go into specifics, but kind of what kind of people reach out to you? Where do you start with them? What kind of success do you have with them? And what does that look like? So I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, amazing. So there's two sets of clients that I work with. One is the individuals that I work with one-on-one, and then the
Okay.
separate to that is going to be the corporates that we do a full-blown 12-month program with their senior leaders. So I'll just start briefly with the one-on-one. So normally when someone reaches out to me one-on-one, to be honest, they've hit a crisis, right? They've something has happened that's triggered them to go, I don't feel good. I don't feel okay. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I don't understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Can you help me? Yeah.
Right.
So it's always centered around their feelings and their emotions, predominantly when they come. So what we do there is we just unpack what it is that they're feeling and why they're feeling at the onset. And then we dive deeper into, what are their stories, what are their paradigms, what
Okay.
is their inner critic saying, and why is it saying what it's saying. And normally that journey is for about 6 months.
Okay.
And what we want to do at the end of that is really get them in a place of what I call calm and being neutral.
Right.
So when they come to me, I notice that they're quite up and down in their emotions, which is great because there's no emotions are wrong, but
Right.
it's almost the emotional stress. It's like you're on an emotional roller coaster, right? Constantly going. One minute I feel great, I feel amazing. Next minute you dip, I don't feel so good. So we want to get them to that sort of neutral state.
Right.
We then focus a lot around who they are as a person. How do
Yeah.
they build relationships? What
Mhm.
type of person do they want to be? Are they sitting in their comfort zone? Some of the topics that we talk about that come up through the one-on-one coaching is also, we talked about it earlier, not sitting in negative emotions, but I find some people almost want to sit sometimes in those negative emotions, because stepping out of that is almost more difficult and it's bringing more and more discomfort. So we're challenging them to step out of those uncomfortable feelings to really work through them. But then on the other side of it, work out who they want to be and why.
Wow.
Some of the other subjects we touch on through the emotional intelligence journey is also around their personal power. So are they able to have effective boundaries? Are they able to say and speak their mind? At the same sense, are they vulnerable? Are they able to be authentic and drop the mask and show who they really are?
Wow.
And then the other side of it, we've got things like fear of success. So if I'm working one-on-one with someone and they're scaling their business or they want to set their business or in that phase of growth, they've got a block. And it's about, well, why do you have that block? And sometimes, we're quick to think it's fear of failure, but it's not. It can also be fear of success. It's that sense, if I become successful, what will people think of me?
Right.
What will people say? And they start dimming their light. So we challenge that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the one-on-one work. It's really powerful. It's really connective. We get a lot of time unpacking who you are as a person. And I think whenever I ask someone what they've got out of that journey at the end of the 6 months, the most common phrase I hear is, I feel free. Like it's almost like they've, dropped the armor.
Yeah.
They've dropped the shield and that weight's come off their shoulders. And there's a sense of standing in your own sovereignty and power of who you are without caring what people think.
Yeah. Very good. Love it.
So I love that sort of work. And then the other side of it, I work with all sorts of top corporate clients around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've got clients in America, we've got clients in the Gulf, London, Europe. And what we really do there is we work with leaders. So normally I'm engaged by the CEO or MD or the SVP, and they say, Ush, we've got a group of leaders. Now, they're great. They've been technically promoted because of their technical ability to do the job, right?
Love it.
They might be amazing engineers. They might be amazing insurance people. They might be the top sales people.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they're in this role, the technical aspect, which is their IQ aspect, is a given. We know that they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the only thing they need to do when they're a leader. They need to manage the emotions of people, right? You're caretaking emotions. That's what you're doing as a leader.
Yeah.
All right. Forget the job. We know you can do the job.
Yeah.
But are you able to hold in your hands the emotions of your people every single day, day in, day out?
Yeah.
You know what to do with those emotions? Do you know how those emotions are going to impact you?
Yeah.
Your ability? Can you empathize with that? Are you able to have the tough conversations that need to be had? Are you hiring the right people for the organization, or are you hiring people that are similar to you? Yeah.
Right.
So that whole world is just fascinating. And I find that, I'm working with super smart people, but when we challenge them on what type of leader they want to be, they don't know how to answer that. And the reason they don't know how to answer that is because they're either modeling a form of leadership that they've experienced before or they've read in a book.
Yeah.
But what they're not doing is they're not tapping into who they are as a human being that has emotions, that needs to connect with other people, that's going to then determine the style of leadership they want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Because I think, from a leadership perspective, a lot of the old guard leadership stuff, which has been passed down, comes from a very sort of 80s red alpha, let's go and gas kind of attitude. And that definitely, doesn't seem to have, the ecology when it comes to, emotional well-being, which I think is important. Correct me if I'm wrong again, Ush, because you're the expert here, but emotions badly managed, badly directed, badly utilized does have profound impact on our health, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. So it's almost like if you imagine you're feeling these emotions and you're suppressing them, it's causing disease, which is disease, right?
Right. Okay.
So it's uncomfortable. You're suppressing that, and you're not dealing with it. And how many people do you know that have illnesses that are suppressed inside of themselves, and then all of a sudden they go to the doctors and they're like, you've got cancer, you've got this terminal illness, you're on the brink of having a breakdown. And they're like, well, hang on a minute, like last week I was okay, like I've been functioning. Why all of a sudden has this happened? And the reality of it is you're not hit with it overnight. It's building up within you. And it all starts with you not being able to address those emotions. And what I say to people when we talk about stress is, what are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things that you think about in the shower? So in those quiet moments,
Yeah.
what is playing on your mind? Yeah.
Mhm.
Is it work? Is it your relationship? Is it your
Mhm.
kids? Is it the fact that you want to have more financial freedom? But the body is going to give you clues. It's going to speak to you, but you need to be quiet enough to be able to hear what it's saying to you. And I think for me, mentioning, when I first learned EQ, I was constantly go, go, go. There were like rarely moments for me to sit still and be quiet and listen to really what my mind and body and thoughts were saying. And it's only when I really go, look, I need to have a bit of a change of career here, that I had that moment of downtime, that I go, right, what is happening here and what's being said. And
Yeah.
then what I find is people as humans will go two ways. You'll get the one type A who will go, I'm going to ignore these voices
Yeah.
because I have a role to play in my life. Like I've dealt with, men and women, but men who have said, look, I can't change my career. I can't work in the industry I want because I'm the breadwinner. I have a wife, I have children that depend on me.
Mhm.
And they are ignoring what's really calling out for them. And then it comes to a point where they can't ignore that anymore, and they'll knock back on my door again in a couple of years and go, I need to do something about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or then you get the other type of person that goes, oh, Sheena, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know the answers of how to get to where I want to get to. I'm scared about listening to these thoughts and voices that are coming up for me. Can you
Yeah.
help me navigate that and put a plan in place for whatever that might be in their life? So yeah, it can go two ways. It's just, are you going to be brave enough to go, I hear this and I know something needs to change. And I bet you, even if some of our listeners or viewers now are listening, they're probably relating that to some of these quiet inner voices that they've got going on. Yeah.
100%. I am myself sitting here
Yeah.
listening
But
in.
you be brave enough to go, I need to deal with this. And when I do talk to people and I say, what's stopping you outside of our, cultural, societal, relationship expectations and norms, it's the fact they don't know how to do it. And they're
Yeah.
also scared of the emotions that's going to be brought up if they make the decision to change their life.
Wow. Incredible stuff. And how does it play out sort of cross culturally? Because I work very internationally. We work a lot into the Russian speaking kind of world. We work into Latin America, again, generalizations, but generally speaking, people in Latin America, very emotional, just making decisions on emotion and feelings. Whereas people in the Russian speaking world, generally speaking, a little bit more sort of linear, logical, cold, a little bit closed off at times, or can appear that way. We work into India, which is a real mix, as you well know.
Mm,
How does this all work cross culturally? Because I know you're sort of scaling your business and you've got ambassadors around the world now.
yeah.
But how does it work cross culturally with
Yeah.
stuff?
I'm really glad you asked that because it really does vary. And my teaching methods have to be adapted based on geographically where we are. And I'll give you a really good example. I was
Mm-hmm.
in Shanghai working with a client for 3.5 weeks,
Yeah,
literally just before the pandemic hit. And it was great. We were working with really high, senior leaders, almost at that, GM, CEO, managing director level.
yeah,
And in the room, we had probably about 15 to 20 of the top businesses in Asia. Yeah.
right.
In that room. And one of the things that really came about when I was working with them is they are scared of emotions. They're scared to display any form of emotions. And they've got such a high need to please, such a high need of perfection, within that culture. And I remember this really profound moment. We were talking about how they were going through work and, the culture they've got with their teams and what they wanted them to do. And
Right.
they said, oh no, they can't make mistakes. If we commit to certain deadlines with a client, they have to be met no matter what, at the cost of almost, the employee's health and well-being. And I said to them, well, where has that come from? Like, why is that the case? And they said, well, this is just how we've been raised. This is how, our parents have raised us. It's the, the way that we work in the culture in Shanghai.
Mm.
And I said, okay, I said, let's take a step back. I said, you guys are leaders, right? And they said, yes. I said, do you have the ability to make a change? And they all thought for a little while and go, yes. So I said, could you go into work tomorrow and say to your team, it's okay to make mistakes?
Right.
And you should have seen the fear in their faces of just trying to get them to acknowledge the fact that they could say
Oh,
that.
really? Yeah. Wow.
And it took a while, but they all said, yes, we can. And when I left them at the end of those 3 weeks, they had all spoken to their teams and said, culturally, we want to shift. Like, we want to make our business a business where we're going to embrace failure, where it's going to be okay to say that we're not doing so well, or that we need more time, or that we need to push back on the client and not be so obedient, is their own words.
Yeah.
And it had a massive shift. But before we could even teach about EQ, or before we could even teach about, what are your personal power, what are your strengths, how do you deal with conflict, we had to go through this whole, it took about a week to
Wow.
just break down that barrier to go, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to fail.
Wow.
That took ages, absolutely ages. And then if we go to the other extreme of when I went to India, I spent a week in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of work there, one-on-one with people, as well as corporates. And I found in one-on-one, again, it's going to be very stereotypical, but this is just my examples of what I've been through, has been that people haven't had the freedom to go into the careers that they've wanted to go in because they've been shaped by what their parents have wanted them to do.
Right.
It's like I've been pushed into finance, I've been pushed into engineering, I've been pushed into IT. And you know what? It's great. I'm earning a lot of money. I'm happy. I've got, the usual, 2.4 kids, happy life. But you know what, Ush, when I go to bed, I am deeply unfulfilled. I am not living my passion. I am miserable every day when I come home from work. I put on a brave face to hang out with my kids and, do all of those things as a parent, but I dread going back to work on Monday.
Yes.
So again, it's that whole cultural stuff of how do we help these people break away from society and these norms of who they've been conditioned to be. I remember one story, there was a guy and his dad pushed him into career in finance, and his dad wasn't even alive, and he still couldn't have, the courage to go, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, what is it that you want to do? And you know what? He wanted to do interior design. That was his passion. So far from, what he was doing in the finance world. And in the end, we coached, we trained, we supported him. And while he had his finance career, we actually got him onto some courses and developed the skills that are needed to all of that interior design. And now he's actually successfully running an entire interior design business. So
wonderful. Hats off.
Absolutely right. The cultural things are huge. And I guess the only one I think I've noticed in Australia is, you might have heard of tall poppy syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Got to cut it down. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So people are afraid to shine their light. People are afraid to, speak of, their achievements. And I remember interviewing someone in COVID, and it was a law firm, and they had done really well through COVID because they were in the legal industry of doing wills and helping with elders and elders' estates.
Yes.
So obviously, at that time of COVID, it was really important. They had a lot of work, and she couldn't say during the interview that her business was thriving. She just wasn't able to say it, and I kept pushing her to say it. And she goes, I can't. And I'm like, why? Like, why can't you say that you're doing really, really well? But it's, again, that fear of success. It's the fear of, what will people think of me if I celebrate who I am?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of my Australian and New Zealand colleagues sort of talk about tall poppy syndrome. And I think we have a version of this in the UK. You would know better, Ush, but I don't think it's as profoundly a part of the culture as it is in Australia, right? It's
No,
there.
it's
Yeah.
not. So we definitely do have to tailor, how we break down some of these barriers around emotions. And I think it also links to failure, everyone's perception of failure as well. I find across countries, across businesses, it's like there's a fear of it. It's like, we can't admit failure, but as you know, the road to success, you almost have to fail to be able to understand and leverage those learnings to take you to that next level.
Absolutely. And, for any of us that have had children or got nieces and nephews or whatever, you watch them when they're babies and they're learning to walk. You soon get that if we were to try and do that in our 40s and 50s and 30s, none of us would be walking because, it takes so much to get up and go again and again and again.
Exactly. There was actually this woman, she's a famous American CEO, one of the top female earners in her business in that category. And she was doing a keynote. And one of the questions that she got asked from the audience was, how have you been so brave to make the business decisions and manage the emotions of scaling your business to where you've got it? And she said it was something her dad did. And she goes, growing up,
Oh,
her dad every single day at the dinner table would say, what 3 things have you failed at today? What mistakes have you made? And it was a thing that he normalized failure. He
mhm,
normalized her making mistakes. And then she'd share whatever that was. And he did it for years and years through school, through uni,
mhm.
through her adult life, through when she set up her own business. And then he would high five and hug her at the end of, those 3 failures. And he basically normalized it. So she said when she set up her business, what she perceived as normal, someone else that hadn't had that, almost desensitization of failure would be like, how are you doing that? Like, how can you make such a big
Wow.
decision in your business? And she goes, well, I'll just high five it at the end with my team, right? If I mess up.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, it's can we normalize that? Can we normalize the emotion of discomfort? Can we normalize our emotions around failure?
It's incredible work. And it reminds me as you're talking, sort of over the last 20 years, I've done millions of courses and different programs and trainings and stuff. And I think throughout all of that, one of the saddest kind of experiences I've had, going onto those programs and courses and meeting great people, is meeting people often in their 60s or even in their 70s who are trying to find their life. And you
Yeah,
sit down with them, and it might be a middle-aged woman who's like in her 60s, and you're talking to her, and her father wanted her to be a doctor. She wanted to be a musician, and
yeah,
she followed, daddy's rule or whatever,
yeah,
mummy's rule, and, became this doctor, hated it, messed up her whole life. And now, at the age of 65 or 70, she's trying to learn how to paint, which is what she always wanted to do. And it's great that she's doing it, but I'm just like, wow, what if you had the tools and the equipment to be able to make that step into your purpose,
mm.
when you were 30 or 25 or whatever
Funny
it
you
might
say
be.
that. I was in LA doing
Mhm.
some training with Bob Proctor, who I've done a lot of my training with.
Oh,
And
wow. Mhm.
funny enough, in the hotel at the same time, and it was just a coincidence, Les Brown was walking
Oh, was
through
he?
the, and he's obviously friends with Bob Proctor. So Bob goes, why don't you come on stage for a bit for half an hour and just give a talk to my people over here? So he came on. It was like amazing. And
Yeah.
he said something that actually has literally, you hear certain things that change your life. This was one of my moments that has sort of cascaded into a lot of decisions that have led me to where
Mhm.
I am today. And he got on stage and he says, similar to what you're saying, he goes, when we die, he goes, you have that usual vision of, pre-COVID, I guess, being surrounded by your friends and family around your deathbed. And, they're there, they're crying, they're talking about your life. He goes, forget all of that. He goes, forget, your friends and family. He goes, imagine you've got the souls and the spirits of your dreams that you never fulfilled
Wow.
around your bed. So the dream of you never being able to paint, the dream of you staying in an unfulfilled relationship for the sake of your kids,
Mm.
the dream of you not mending your, a strange relationship with your child or your parents,
Yeah.
your dream of not setting up your business, your dream of, not pursuing all of these things that you wanted to do. And he goes, imagine those souls and those spirits around your bed. And he goes, how are you going to feel in that moment, knowing that you don't have the time now? And he goes, what are you going to say to those souls? What are you going to say to them? He goes, well, how are you ever going to justify why you didn't do what your heart was telling you to do or what your soul was calling you to do?
Wow.
He goes, there's no reason that you could give in that moment in time that's going to, that you're going to hear that go, yeah, I was right not to do it. And when I heard that, I literally, while he was talking, I wrote down a list of things that I was compromising on,
Right.
list of things that I was secretly unfulfilled in, but scared to speak up about.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whether that's relationships, friendships, working with shitty clients, not charging enough, all of these things that were clearly on my mind. I wrote them down and I said to myself, I'm going to give myself 18 months. I'm going to tick off every single one of those because that's one less thing that's going to haunt me when it's my time to leave. And I've pretty much done all of them now in the last 2 years.
Oh, good for you. It's
It's really important. And I, you know, one thing if I can encourage people is you don't have to share it with anyone, but write down, you know, what are those things that are keep holding you back? If you could have a magic wand and change anything about your life,
yeah.
and no one needs to read your list, no matter how scary or vulnerable or confronting that list is, I urge you to write it down. Because when you see it, you're instantly going to go, I can't do it. And you'll think of a million reasons, right? Why you can't quit your job, why you can't do this, why you can't contact your dad that you haven't spoken to in 8 years, like whatever it is that's going on in your life, you will think of 100 reasons why you can't do it. Once you've thought of the 100 reasons why you can't do it, you're going to feel the discomfort as you're reading the list, right? All of these emotions are going to come up for you. But write it down, put that list away, let the emotions go. And if I can challenge you, read that list every day for 30 days. And see what happens to your body, see what happens to your thoughts, see how often you start thinking about these things during your day-to-day, when you're washing up, you know, when you're playing with your kids, when you're having dinner. That list is going to start coming up. It's going to start nudging you to go, hey, this is going against my soul. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled in this aspect of my life. And it's going to shout at you. It's going to scream at you to do something about it.
Absolutely. It's incredible stuff. What would you say, Ush, to, I know you work with a lot of high net worth individuals, entrepreneurs, go-getters, then you've got the organizational side. I know you've also got very much sort of everyday people that are just really committed to living life at their best. But there will be people here that are maybe thinking, this is really good. I need some of this, but I'm not sure if it's for me. And we both know it's for everybody, right? So
Everyone,
what
yeah.
would you say to those people that are maybe, you know, maybe they've had changes in their work, maybe they're thinking about some change in relationship or some change in their well-being. You know, we're all going through lots of stuff, you know, during the pandemic. What would you say to the listener that's kind of listening in, resonates with what you're saying, but doesn't really know where to start? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I'd say just get in touch. Let's just have a conversation about what it is that you're feeling and why you feel you need to reach out and change something. Sometimes it's just a conversation that we need to have that's going to nudge you in the right direction and give you the tools to do what you need to do. In other cases, it will lead to a little bit more support that's going to be needed to get you going. But I really believe it's needed for every single person. It's not anyone I know that I've met that has said, I don't need, you know, help around my emotions or help around, managing my emotional intelligence and stuff. So it absolutely is for everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to go into a massive coaching program. I think a lot of people fear, I just want to put it out there, you know, when they contact coaches about the expectations of what happens. And you know, I literally talk to people, you know, through Messenger, through Facebook, informally, and give them the support and help they need to navigate, even if it's one or two things. There was a guy that reached out to me just a couple of weeks ago, and he had an issue around codependency and sort of addictive behaviors.
Right.
So he's like, you know, obviously there's an EQ aspect there around the emotions and the triggers for certain things, you know. Can you help me? And there was no coaching involved. It was a case of, here you go, read this, understand that, go understand more about what's happening for you, and then come and talk to me again.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's all it needs to be. But I think the first thing is just, ask for help or ask what books you can read and learn more about it. And I think one of the biggest things for EQ is, you know, we do read a lot. There's a lot of information on YouTube, as you know, for free. And everyone becomes a coach overnight, right? Pretty much, because they've watched a few YouTube videos.
Expert.
Exactly, but don't make it shelf help, right? Which I say. So shelf help is where you read something or you buy a book and you put it on the shelf and you never actually implement it.
A bit like Behind Me, right?
Yeah. So I find that with EQ, you do have to take action, right? You can't just read Daniel Goleman's book. You can't read Travis Bradbury's book and go, oh, I am going to become an expert in EQ. The only way to change it is through behavior.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Yeah. So you are going to have to do things that are going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, that might challenge you, but I promise you it's going to be worth it, because you are going to get through the other side of that and go, wow, I feel good. I don't know why I feel good, but I do. So that there will be stuff, there will be an onus on you to make some of those changes for sure.
Wow, that's incredible. Really, really kind of you, Ush, to offer that. And also, I'd like to encourage people as well, if you have children, don't just let them go to school and go to their, hobbies and kind of, go to town on a Saturday afternoon and just go through life and expect them to get on with it, because at some point they're going to hit the railroads when it comes to all this emotional stuff. I went to a good school. I'm fairly well educated. Not the most intelligent guy on the planet, but I've got a little bit of something, I guess. And but my emotional intelligence was really, really weak growing up because of different circumstances, and that's had a huge effect on every single major decision I made in my 20s.
Yeah.
Every single major decision that I've made for the rest of my life in some, circumstances. And I think this emotional intelligence for kids is so refreshing for me to hear that you do work with kids, Ush. It's one of, as a parent or as an uncle, as somebody that's got, kids in the family, it's one of the greatest gifts that you could give your children is getting them on that path of understanding the emotional part of their being, right? Because it's not going away. What's your take on that, Ush? Am I on the right track or?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, with schools, a lot of the focus is around, the IQ side of things. But when your children leave the school doors, they're interacting with humans. They've got to have resilience. They've got to have empathy. And I don't think we're learning that enough in the right way in schools, because there's curriculums that need to be followed and adhered to, which I get.
Yes.
Right. So what we want to do with these children is help them identify what I call the size of the problem. So what is the size of the problem of what you're dealing with? Is it small, medium, large? And is your reaction in proportion to the size of the problem? Yeah. So we've trained kids that are like even 5 years old, and we run workshops with them to go, for example, your favorite cup for breakfast or your bowl for breakfast, is in the dishwasher, it's not washed, and you have a massive tantrum over that. What is the size of that problem versus mum walking out with you and, losing her car keys and you getting locked out? What is the size of the problem? And how do we respond in relation to that? We also teach kids as they get older, within the 10, 11, 12, 13 bracket, of managing their emotions. It's a tough world, right, at the moment. More and more kids are online. Yeah. More and more kids are seeing things that we never saw in our generation, Matt. Like, they're exposed to so much. And how do we navigate that? And also almost things like, how do you be a good friend? I remember when my daughter, she was only like 8, and she came home from school one day and she said, Mom, there's a guy in my school, and he just moved from Africa to Australia, and he was struggling to make friends. And she said, he's going to run away tonight. And I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah, he's going to pack his bag and he's going to go. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Like, what's going on? And she was able to navigate that and speak to him and, be that friend that was needed. But she could only do that if she knew how to manage herself first, to then help him manage what he was going through. So yeah, we teach kids all about resilience. And then the big thing that we teach for kids a little bit older as they're leaving school is to remember to keep their imagination and creativity going. So as adults, we lose that. We really do. It's sort of conditioned out of us. You look at a child playing, they've got a water bottle or a drum kit out of boxes, and they'll make an aeroplane, and they'll do all this sort of stuff through their powers of imagination.
Right.
As we get older, we become more logical and we lose our ability to think creatively and imagine. And I teach kids, the techniques about how can you take that on into your teens and 20s and adult life. Like, we actually run sessions, believe it or not, in the boardroom around creativity and imagination and thinking time, because people have forgotten how to do it in the business world.
Yeah, it's incredible. We really, really have. I think things are getting better, but it really is. There's a handful of experts, definitely in the EQ world, and you're sort of one of them, that are kind of, because there's a lot of, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but just like a lot of the sciences, there's a lot of not so good stuff. There's a lot of overnight experts. people that have gone to a weekend course and kind of got the black belt through the mail and that kind of stuff, right? And that's not to knock that, but it's just to say that there's a world of difference between someone who's kind of really gone through the training and done it over a period of time and got all the qualifications and paid the price and then worked with the clients to get the results. So we really wanted to kind of highlight you, Ush, in this kind of sphere of EQ. It's incredibly important, and it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? It's not something that you just
100%.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's constantly ongoing. Like, I don't think I'll ever, I'm an EQ expert in teaching, but I'm definitely not one in myself as a human being, because we're constantly evolving. And the reason for that is that, who we were 12 months ago is not who we are now. And it's that saying that we've heard, right, that every, situation that you face in life will demand a different version of you.
Right.
Yeah. So even if you are running your own business, to set your business up demands a certain level of EQ and a type of person. Yeah. To quit your job and set your business. To then scale your business requires a different version of you. And then to become an 8-figure business and build a team around you requires a different version of you. Yeah. And you're going to get triggered along that journey. If you're a parent, you'll know raising, children as, when they were 8 years old and to 18 is massive. It's going to demand different things of you. So I am still triggered by my daughter on many things. I'm still triggered by my team at work. I'm still triggered by clients. The difference is I'm aware that I'm triggered.
Okay.
And I know what to do about it now. So I'm not staying in that space of uncomfortableness for too long. That's the difference. Yeah. So your sense of awareness will become higher and you'll go, right, this is how I'm feeling. This is why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving. What am I now going to do in response to that? How am I going to have that conversation with that person about how I feel, as opposed to just shoot off the hip, right? Or have knee-jerk reactions. Yeah. So you are constantly going to evolve, 100%. It's just a journey that's going to be ongoing for you as you go through life.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So we've got a couple of minutes. Final thoughts. Anything else you want to say about anything? We'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, I just want to say, don't be afraid of your emotions, and make that list. I think your eyes will be opened when you make that list of all the things that, if you had a magic wand or an EQ wand, what it is that you would want to change in your life. And we don't ask ourselves. It's something that's also called a bit of, shadow work, right? So when you have that list of all of these things that you want to change in your life, it's doing the deep, dark, dirty work around your emotions to get through that journey to the other side. So, I've had my marriage ended. I've quit my job. I've had huge milestones in my life that, to be honest, if I didn't write that list and I wasn't listening to what my soul wanted, I wouldn't have done it. Right. So, but with that, hasn't been easy. It's been, a journey of navigating those emotions, but everything can be done. Whatever it is that your soul wants,
right,
it can happen. You just got to ask for help.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Want to thank you again, Ush, for your precious time. I know being in Australia, it's your evening, our morning, and I know you've got a lot of stuff on at the moment. So we really appreciate you giving your precious time to help the viewers out. I'm hoping to have you again, for maybe a deeper dive into the dynamics of EQ at some point. But I really, really appreciate your schedule and everything you're doing. We'd love to have you in London at some point on stage. That'd be pretty cool.
That's the plan. I'm really hoping to get out there for 2022.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been back to the UK now for almost 8 years. So, yeah, it's been a while. So I need to get back for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely love to see you if that happens in 2022. And thank you so much for everything you do and all the impact you're making, across the planet. We really, really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Matt.
Thank you. You take care.
Bye.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, that was just absolutely incredible. A real sort of insight into the world of EQ and how specifically that can benefit you. We are emotional beings. Emotions are a part of your holistic being and a whole lot more. And so your ability to connect with your emotions, to understand your emotions, and to navigate through this journey of life with your emotions is so, so, so key. Again, I just want to thank Ush for her precious time. You can connect with her, via LinkedIn. She's on Facebook as well. She's very, very approachable, obviously very professional, and somebody that I think you should be all following in your desire to advance in your sphere of influence, to create impact, and to leave a legacy. My name is Matt W. L. Nerona. I want to thank you for your time. My time is now up.